So hello, I wanted to start some session about books because I like to discuss about books and I like reading books. So for the first sort of such video, I don't know how frequently I'll do it or if I do another one or not, but definitely this one I'm going to do. So for the first video, I wanted to talk about books, which is one of the genre of books that I like to read and to collect. I have about 50 or so books about books. I've read most of them, and I'm still looking for some old volumes which are right now too expensive for me to buy. But I'm always looking to expand that collection. So this started actually 2 years back when I read sort of the first book about book, and that was a book on Nicholas Copernicus's book on the revolutions, which was one of the outstanding scientific books of all time. And this was written by Owen Gingerich from Harvard University and Smithsonian, so who wanted to do a census of all the first and second edition of copies of Copernicus's book, and his whole journey of doing that was recorded in a book that he wrote, and the book was titled "The Book That Nobody Read." And I found this book while on my first trip to Hay-on-Wye in Wales, and I did not know anything about the book before. I did not even know about the author at that point. So just the title sounded interesting, and I just picked it up. And it sat on my shelf for a few months, and then when I read it, instantly I fell in love with the book. And that's the first sort of book about books that I have read. And it started on this whole journey, and I realized that I enjoyed reading quite a lot that book and also the subsequent books that I've read. So while reading these sort of books and essays on books, one name cropped up quite frequently, and that name was Nicholas Basbanes, and in particular his book A Gentle Madness. And I got a copy of that book last year, and it was only this year that I finally read it. And it's a large volume, and I mean, everyone praises this book, and needless to say that I also liked it quite a bit. So what I decided to do today is sort of go through some of the books of Basbanes that I have. So he was a reporter and a longtime book critic and book reviewer. And then in 1995, he wrote A Gentle Madness. And since then, he has written 10 books, mostly books on books. But two of them are, so one of them is a biography of H.W. Longfellow, which is called Across of Snow, which I don't have. And another one is sort of his collection of interviews that he took with authors called About the Author, which also I don't have right now. But the rest of the 8 books I have, and I'll just briefly go through some of them and explain some of these like sort of nice things that these books contain. And yeah, so the first book is called A Gentle Madness, and this is the first book that Nicholas Basbanes wrote. So the full title is A Gentle Madness, Bibliophiles, Bibliomanes, and the Eternal Passion for Books. So my copy is a bit old and tattered, as you can see, so there are markings already, and this is a paperback version, but already in this paperback version you can see that the cover is very nice, and this is true of the hardback edition as well, so which is now sort of like a collector's item, because the first printing hardback was only for 7,500 copies, and this book has now gone on to sell more than 75,000 copies. So the publisher was not very sure if this book would appeal, because it's a very niche subject. So this is about sort of book collectors and people who really love books, and some of them, they go overboard with books as well. So there are two parts in this book, and the second part is about specific collectors, and there are like chapters on book thieves as well. So there is a very famous chapter called the Bloomberg Collection, which is about Stephen Bloomberg, who was a notorious thief of books. So he sort of stole several books from, so hundreds and hundreds of books actually from different libraries in the US, and he was finally caught. So this book is about book collecting, book passion, and about different type of people who collect books. And it's a very long book, as I said. So I think it's about 630 pages long, and but it's worth reading if you are interested in books and book culture. It's a very nice book to start with. And um, after I finished, actually not after I finished, while I was reading this book, I was so captivated by Basbanes and his storytelling style that I got several of his books, several of his other books, and he has written several sequels actually to this book. So the second part, which I am currently reading now, and this is a much better copy because you can see already that this is a hardback copy that I have with the nice dust jacket as well. So yeah. So the only problem with this is that it's slightly faded. So there is fading on the spine. Otherwise, this is a very, I mean, almost perfect copy of the book with no markings at all. So this is called Patience and Fortitude, a roving chronicle of book people, book places, and book cultures. And the title uh, comes from a famous speech given by the mayor of New York during wartime, and he said that um, uh, two qualities that will keep people going in these tough times are patience and fortitude. And yeah, so I mean, I'll not spoil the other bit. So there is also a book connection with the title. So if you're interested, you can take a look at this book. So this I'm reading right now. I'm in the first chapter, and I really like it so far, and I think it will also be a good book. So the third book that Basbanes wrote is called Among the Gentlemen, and this is titled Strategies and Perspective for the Book Hunter in the 21st Century. And this is a sort of tips and tricks of the trade for book collecting. So it's a paperback edition that I have, and this also allows me to actually show you something which some of the books have. So if you look at the spine, then you see a marking here, and this is also true of some other books that I have. So for example, here is another mark, and here is another mark. So these are what are called remainder copies, which the publisher decided for some reason to discard and not sell, maybe because of low sales or maybe not appealing to the region that it was published in and things like that. And these are usually copies which one can get for very cheap. These remainder copies. I don't mind the remainder copies because I don't really want a pristine version right now. So I'm fine with remainder versions and paperbacks. Even this is not a very good paperback because there are like chippings here, but otherwise there are no markings. Yeah, so as I said, this book is about book collecting, especially after the advent of the internet. So it's a bit dated because it was written in 2002, I think. Um, and but still it contains several nice stories. So some of the stories, they tend to get repeated from other books by Basbanes and other talks that he have given elsewhere. But this is like a short book about book collecting and so on. So which is quite interesting. At least I finished it very recently and I quite liked it. And then continuing his sort of series of books and book culture. Next we have A Splendor of Letters, The Permanence of Books in an Impermanent World. So this is another paperback remaindered edition published by HarperCollins. So I forgot to mention the publishers for the other book. So this is from Henry Holt, All Books. Patience and Fortitude is from HarperCollins, and A Gentleman, this is by Henry Holt, All Books. So these A Splendor of Letters and Every Book Its Reader, The Power of the Printed Word to Stir the World. Again, this is by HarperCollins. These are sort of continuation of the books that I already mentioned, Gentle Madness and Patience and Fortitude. So these I'm yet to read. So I hope to do them soon. The next book that, again, it's a very nice hardback that I have, as you can see already. So with nice, so there is a nice picture as well. So this is called Editions and Impressions, and it's 20 years on the book bit. So this is a collection of articles that Basbanes wrote over his long career, and it contains several nice pieces. But most of these stories have already either appeared in his books or in his talks and podcasts. If you listen to them, then some of these stories will be repeated. But there are also nice editions. So this is printed by Fine Press Books, and the copy that I have is sort of like nice because of one reason, and that is So it's hidden. You cannot see it. So when I first got the book and I opened it, I did not see it. So um, but if you remove the dust jacket, then you'll see that there is a nice book plate here, and this book plate is by it says that the book belonged to the library of Edward John Kenney, and I did a Google search of who Edward John Kenney was and found out that he was a Latinist who recently died, and I think his his heirs or um, his children or whoever inherited his book collection decided to sell them, and it's good because I got this book from. So I did not know at the time that this was sort of like it had a book plate of a famous Latinist, but I knew that it was used, so it's not really in very excellent condition because. So there is a problem with the spine. I'm not sure if you can see this. So it's a slightly bent spine. So this is probably because it was not kept properly in the shelf um, uh, of the previous owner, and because of that, I think either it was placed like so it was placed straight, but at the corner of the shelf, which tends to sort of damage the spine, or it was kept this way, and there were other heavier books kept on top of it. So, sort of, yeah. Anyway, so this is not in, I mean, in excellent condition, as I would say, like new, but it's definitely a good copy that I have, and yeah, it's not a very cheap copy as well. So, I mean, this book is not really very cheap right now, but it's a nice book. So it contains collection of essays that Basbanes wrote. So I completed this book about a month back, I think, and I really liked it. The next book that he wrote is called A World of Letters. So it's a history of the Yale University Press, and it is published by the Yale University Press. So Yale University Press is one of the most outstanding university presses, in my opinion, because I read several books, or I own several books by Yale University Press, and they are always on nice niche topics, which I really like, and their printing is quite nice as well. So this is another second. I mean, all of my books are second-hand because these are. I mean, some of these books are now no longer in print, I guess. But anyway, so this is a history of the Yale University Press, and it was written in the centenary year, as you can see, 1908 to 2008. I'm yet to read this, but so the bookseller has very nicely packaged this book. So this is not this plastic wrapping does not come, the mylar wrapping does not come with the book. So this was done by the bookseller, and interestingly, the bookseller also said that they will give a bookmark with the book, and this is what I got. So it's a vintage it's a vintage postcard, and I mean, it's written in Italian, so I'm not sure what this says really, because my Italian is rusty, but it's from Milan, and it's from 1932. So it's a nice vintage postcard which they gave as a bookmark, which I really liked. And finally, the last book of Basbanes that I want to mention is called On Paper. So the everything of its 2000-year history. So it's again, I have not read this book, and it's published by Vintage. Again, it's a nice paperback copy that I have with no markings at all, but except one. So it's a specimen. So I'm not sure what this is supposed to mean, but I'm guessing that this is sort of publisher's um, way of giving this book to some reviewer or some I don't know somebody as a copy, some bookseller or some library or some author as a copy to look at. So anyway, so this is the last book that I have of Nicholas Basbanes. It's on paper, as you can see. So it's about everything to do with paper making, how paper came to be used for books and so on. So I'm sure it's going to be a nice read. So it's not as long as some of his earlier books, but it's still 400 plus pages. So I'm looking forward to reading some of this later on. So yeah, so these are all the books that I have of Basbanes. I also recommend some of his podcasts and videos that are available online. They are nice, and he talks about books and people that he has met, and it's quite enjoyable actually. So yeah, so that's all I have today, and maybe I'll try to do another very quick video later on. So yeah. So see you soon.